Welcome, everyone. My name is Heather Fleming. I am
And
a grassroots organizer as well as the founder and executive director of the Missouri Equity Education Partnership and best friends with the magnificent Heather Melville.
I'm Heather Malvo, and I am a critical race theory scholar that critiques pop culture and politics and the intersections of those two.
So today's session is about something powerful and urgent: cultural warfare, narrative strategy, and grassroots power, all told through the lens of Kendrick Lamar's 24/25 rap battle with Drake. What Kendrick did was not just about music or personal rivalry. It was deeply political, anti-fascist, and full of lessons for us as organizers. Over the next hour, we'll explore his strategy, walk through his performances at both the Pop Out concert and the Super Bowl, and most importantly, learn how we can apply those tactics to fight systems of power, not just individuals. While this could be about kicking Drake once again while he's down, this is more about movement building and harnessing our collective power to fight for our rights.
So here's what you can expect tonight. Through each key strategy, we will break down Kendrick's approach through a justice lens, meaning we'll see how culture shapes power and resistance. Then we'll connect his moves directly to the fascist threats and systemic oppression that shape our world right now. Finally, we'll translate that cultural narrative into practical tools for local organizing. And by the end, you'll have a clear action plan rooted in truth, culture, and system level targeting, tools that you can use tomorrow and beyond. So, we prepared a worksheet for you, and you can go ahead and scan the little QR code with your phone, and use the worksheet we created for you to take notes and strategize beyond this session if you wish. Beyond a rap battle. This wasn't just two rappers exchanging diss tracks. It was a public reckoning, a cultural moment of truth. Kendrick used the battle to challenge Drake's legitimacy, not just as a rapper, but as a cultural figure complicit with power structures. Kendrick exposed Drake's cultural theft, his alignment with corporate interests, and his role in silencing Black voices. From an organizer's perspective, Kendrick employed key tools: receipts to back up claims, community narratives to ground truth, highlighting contradictions to weaken his opponent, and strategic exposure to shift public opinion. Drake played the role of the industry's creation, a figure built up to uphold certain power dynamics and not disrupt them.
Yes. So, what happened? I love this part because I got to follow it in real time with my sons. We were so excited every time somebody said that Kendrick dropped. And so let's look at the arc of the Kendrick versus Drake feud. So both Kendrick and Drake had traded subtle shots over the years since Drake took offense to Kendrick's verse on Control. The breaking point appeared to be First Person Shooter by Drake and J. Cole. It unfolded over several key releases, starting with the direct shot on Like That, then escalating with Euphoria, 616 in LA, and Meet the Grams, where Kendrick named specific grievances he had with Drake and his career, including the systemic forces backing Drake, Drake's exploitation of Black American culture, and his personal moral failing. It finally culminated in Not Like Us, a public anthem of resistance and exposure. Each release was carefully timed, strategic, and loaded with cultural meaning. So let's look at some of his strategies. The first strategy was strategic silence. Kendrick didn't tweet or shout. He built power quietly, allowing anticipation and speculation to work for him. Then he released precise, devastating truths that he had predetermined to be part of his messaging. This strategic silence is survival, a tool taught by critical race theory and used by organizers. It's narrative organizing at its finest, knowing when to hold your cards close and when to strike loud and clear. And so, one of the quotes that kind of matches up with that is he says in Euphoria, the superpowers get neutralized. I can only watch in silence. The famous actor we once knew was looking paranoid and not spiraling. And he certainly did spiral.
All right, so let's do a political parallel. Build in silence, strike with precision. So we're going to apply this principle to a real world movement moment. Many of you may remember the Tennessee Three. So in 2023, three Tennessee state representatives, Justin Jones in the middle, Justin Pearson to the right, and Gloria Johnson to the left, protested in the state house in response to a mass shooting. For that protest, Jones and Pearson, both young black men, were expelled by the GOP dominated legislature. Gloria Johnson, a white woman, was not. But instead of immediately reacting with chaos or emotion, Jones and Pearson returned home, stayed grounded in community, and then came back stronger. They didn't lash out, they let the hypocrisy speak for itself. They struck with precise, powerful speeches that were broadcast nationally. Pearson invoked Dr. King and Memphis's civil rights history, and Jones spoke about the moral failure of political theater over real action on gun violence. So, what happened next? Their expulsion backfired, they were reappointed, and the national media covered it. Movements mobilized, and what looked like defeat became a platform. That's Kendrick's method in action. Build with integrity and strike with narrative force, not just to clap back, but to shift power. And now we have Pearson just announced his run for US Congress a couple days ago. I did it with integrity, and y'all still trying to hate on me. Just wait and see. More blood be spilling. It's just paint to me. And he said that in Man in the Garden.
Application for organizers. In your work, this means focusing on base building before big public actions. Build your coalitions quietly and deeply. Let your opposition underestimate you and then strike decisively. This includes determining your messaging ahead of time and planning what it will be and how it will be delivered. Create your key points and deliver that message over and over, despite the opposition's red herrings and straw man arguments. This is a tactical approach to sustaining movements and protecting your people. We also caution you that in this time, you begin protecting yourself and your organizations or your organizing efforts through the use of privacy apps. This means finding alternatives to commonly used apps like Google Docs. I know it's ironic because we gave you notes in Google Docs, but still try to find alternatives to Google Docs, Microsoft Teams, and other technology tools that cooperate with governmental entities to share your data that can then be used to track your words and online behaviors. And so, again, accompanying quote, I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk, I hate the way that you dress. He reiterated that message over and over again throughout songs and proved it in his actions.
All right. So strategy number two, target systems and not just people. Throughout the beef, Kendrick didn't just attack Drake personally. He named the institutions and systems that were protecting Drake. The media machinery, the cultural industry, and the silence of powerful men. He shifted the focus from individual harm to the structural enablers that sustain it. This shift is foundational in critical race theory, which teaches us that racism and oppression are embedded in systems. They're ordinary, not exceptions. So our fight must go beyond attacking individual bad actors. We must dismantle the structures that uphold harm and protect fascism. So Kendrick called out exploitative culture industries and mocked OVO as a corporate lab created tool designed to manufacture stars and silence dissent. He highlighted institutional predation and masculine silence that allow harm to continue unchecked. And he says, you playing dirty with propaganda, it blow up on you. You playing dirty with Zach Bia and Twitter bots. Just calling him out for all of the rumors that, him hanging out with young girls that were underage, and all of these things that were very much seen out in the open, but others were not calling him on it. They were in a way celebrating it or turning a blind eye, and Kendrick was not happening. So another political parallel. You all may recognize this face, Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, and she is a blueprint. So when organizing against Trumpism, we must name the entire ecosystem, just like uh, Kendrick named the ecosystem that was supporting Drake. So for us, this is the GOP apparatus, the courts enabling abuses, the media silence, the capitalist systems profiting from fascism. So, like Kendrick, our target is systemic, it's not just individual. And Rep. Ayanna Pressley has been one of the clearest and most relentless voices exposing that fascism isn't just about Trump, it's about systems. So in 2023, she took to the House Oversight Committee to task on Project 2025 and the Supreme Court corruption. And she says Project 2025 is only able to be successful if the Supreme Court allows it. So Congress must act. Then at a 2024 judiciary hearing, she made the connection plain. Leonard Leal, the conservative mega donor, helped create both the Supreme Court's current makeup and the authoritarian blueprint of Project 2025. So the Supreme Court's makeup with those that are being bought and taking bribes and gifts and all of these things. But Presley didn't stop at critique. She demanded action. She called for a Supreme Court expansion, a binding code of ethics for Supreme Court justices, investigations of Justice Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh. She described the court as far right extremist and unaccountable, warning that its legitimacy is and still is in free fall. Presley's power lies in her precision. She didn't just name the corruption, she called out the institutional breakdown, she insisted on structural reform. It's not just symbolic gestures. This is exactly what our movement needs is systemic diagnosis followed by systemic response. Presley doesn't just speak truth, she lays out the roadmap for accountability. Her comments are sharp calls to action, and she lays out what we in organizing, we in as concerned citizens need to follow. We need to expose the fusion of GOP policymaking with court capture strategies, name extremist intent as structural and not personal. We must demand legislative fixes and not just tweets, takes, or think pieces in performative action that we've been seeing far too much. This is the blueprint. Presley doesn't just name the crisis, she names the way forward. And that's exactly what movements must do.
Okay, so again, when we look at how to apply this for organizers, and I'm going to consider each of you, regardless of your role, as potential organizers because we're at a point where all of us need to be using our voice and using our power. Condemnation of the enactment of Project 2025 isn't just about targeting Trump, it's about critiquing, calling out, and dismantling the systems that enable him. Getting Trump out of power doesn't change that the entire system was complicit in his ascendance to power and manipulation of our government. So, what does that mean? Your organizing goals must include both short term goals for stopping actions in the immediate and planning for long term systemic change. The actions that we see now are the culmination of long term goals that the Republicans began planning for and implementing in the 70s. Our goals must be based upon our vision of society, not a response to the current culture wars that the opposition has started. What is our larger goal? What do we want to do to ensure that change is permanent? One of my favorite quotes: the industry can hate me, F them all and they mama. He came from a perspective of really not caring that he was calling out the industry that he was part of. So even though he's part of something, he named what the problem is with those things. So, strategy number 3, use culture as a weapon. The power of Not Like Us went beyond viral hits. Kendrick made resistance joyful, local, and rooted in culture, turning his diss into a celebratory moment. He used dance, colors, symbols, and memes, making the message accessible and unforgettable. This wasn't about lectures, it was about culture as weapon and shield. He tied pride to Compton, place and history as sources of power. This is how movements grow through culture, not policy. Kendrick's cultural references weren't just generalized African American culture, but Compton culture. His use of language, shuby, jabroni, whipping feet, inclusion of local LA legends and artists, dances specific to West Coast culture, and recognizable LA imagery serve two purposes: to both communicate pride and community and to teach the greater culture about LA and Compton, counter storytelling. He used a localized lens to create understanding in the greater community. However, I do want to differentiate between joy as resistance and rest as resistance. On social media, we often talk about the two as if they are synonymous, and they are not. To be an active ally in the resistance, each of us must understand the nuanced differences in the two. After the election, many Black people, including particularly the members of the 92%, announced that we would be resting, whatever that looks like for each person. The primary reason for this was because we realized that the next step in the resistance required that our white accomplices and allies step to the forefront. This is strategic, something that you will understand further if you delve into Project 2025. Many of the key strategies that this plan outlines to grasp power depends on the white majority's resistance to Black protest, rallies, and marches. They have no plan for a lack of Black response, and certainly no plan for an outsized white response to the atrocities they want to implement. And so, for this reason, Black rest is resistance. White allies, I just want to make sure that the key thing you remember is that for you, joy is resistance, but rest is complicity. And my lyric quote, notice I said we, it's not just me, I'm with the culture feeling. Because, yes, he tied what he was saying to his love and support of culture.
So, political parallel. CRTR Critical Race Theory's Voice of Color thesis teaches us that marginalized voices offer unique insight into systems of oppression, using culture as insurgency, challenging dominant narratives, and exposing hypocrisy. So, take Congressman Ilhan Omar, who's pictured here. She's a Democrat in Minnesota. In 2023, she stood on the House floor and said, whether it's Ferguson or Gaza, the pattern is the same: unchecked power, military force used on civilians, and silence from those meant to defend human rights. Like Kendrick, she refuses to stay in the role assigned to her. As a Black Muslim former refugee, she uses her identity not as cover but as clarity to reveal contradiction. When Republicans removed her from the Foreign Affairs Committee, she didn't retreat. She declared, my leadership and voice will not be diminished. If I am not on this committee for one term, my voice will get louder and stronger. That's voice of color in action. Lived experience turned into political resistance. Like Kendrick, she names, speaks from the margins, and turns backlash into momentum. This is cultural insurgency, not just art as protest, but identity as resistance and truth as strategy in the fight against fascism. And like Kendrick said, sometimes you just gotta pop out and show ninjas. I mean, that's real.
Yes, you do. And so when we think about how to apply that in organizing, to fight back, you need to make your movement culturally rich. Center joy, rhythm, and connection. These build resilience and draw people in. One thing that we know about authoritarianism is that it thrives on fear and hate. Centering joy is an act of resistance in the face of it. So, how do you do this? Promote the use of art in our movement. That means writing, poetry, painting, graphic design, music, and any other form of expression that allows people to protest and resist. Organize from a local perspective that speaks to the people within those areas, then use that to connect people with the larger movement. So create art, rituals, and slogans that are rooted in your community's culture. And then using CRT, tell a counter story of who we are, what we want, and why we want it. Learning the stories of those who believe differently than you helps you organize more effectively. Sharing your stories can build connections and sway support more than facts and statistics ever could. Sharing our stories and therefore our culture through efforts like deep canvassing can be the key to creating change in our communities. Culture isn't just background noise, it's a front line in our struggles. And so I want to take a second and you can post in the comment, but we prefer to you for you to actually unmute and kind of answer this question. What symbols, things, or sounds could anchor your movement in joy, truth, and resilience?
In Portland, it made everything so the images, but also the videos that you saw, like the violence that they were met with, it was so striking to see. Like you could see that they were met with violence. They didn't come there angry. They didn't, they're coming there with passion, right? And they're coming there with they're being fueled by their anger of the situation, but they're not coming there to inflict violence on the community. They're not coming there to inflict violence on ICE that is, there obviously to terrorize communities. And so when you saw the dancing and the happy and the costumes in relation to the SWAT gear and the covered faces and the guns and the pepper spray and all of these things, it told such a different picture than I think we normally see when we think of protests. So I love that, and that's one of the things that I admire the most about protests in South Africa. They always have somebody playing music and they're dancing and they're chanting. It's very different than what we see here in the U.S. often, and so I really appreciate thinking about this through a different lens and bringing our joy with us as we fight this fight. Let's get into it. Strategy number 4. Expose hypocrisy and contradictions. So Kendrick's power came from exposing contradictions that were already there. He didn't invent rumors, but he let the contradictions do the work. So Drake's, fake blackness, and not that we policing people blackness, but I'll get into that in a second. Accents used as performance, exploitation masked as cool, all were liabilities for Drake's brand. So if anyone followed Drake from the beginning, like in his days on Degrassi, if you know that he started out as an actor on a little teen pop show, right? He was a little dude in a wheelchair. He ain't had no fade, no lineup, no nothing. He just was like he came as he was. He talked a certain way, like the way his voice was, or his inflection and all of this. And then all of a sudden, overnight, he started getting lineups. He got fades. He doing designs in his hair. He changing the way he talking. He code switching depending on whether or not he's around black folks or white folks. Changing the way he dressed, beefing up. Like I remember seeing him once. He beefed up, and I was like, dude look like Suge Knight. Like he really is trying to be the next Suge Knight, at least in his looks, not in the intimidation and the all the things we know Suge for. So um Kendrick allowed the industry machine to look absurd by and collapse under his own weight. So his silence from supposed allies spoke volumes too, because nobody was coming up and speaking up and saying that Drake wasn't doing the things that Kendrick said he was doing. From Euphoria, he says, "No, you a massive manipulator and a habitual liar too, but don't tell no lie about me, and I won't tell truths about you." So let's get into this political parallel. So fascism is full of contradictions. They thrive on contradiction, preaching morality while breaking laws, claiming defense of the people while enriching elites. Fascist leaders don't just attack democracy, they weaponize its language. So Trump says law and order all the time while breaking laws and being a 34 count convicted felon. The Supreme Court claims neutrality while accepting gifts from billionaires and using their power to enact the conservative blueprint we see in Project 2025. The GOP cries protect the children while gutting public schools, banning books, and blocking gun reforms that could save lives. These aren't just inconsistencies, they are strategic contradictions. And so Snyder's On Tyranny teaches us we defend institutions by exposing hypocrisy. That's how we weaken fascism's grip. In theory, checks and balances in the courts, Congress, and the presidency are supposed to stop abuse of power before it takes hold. But under Trump, we are seeing a bastardization of these powers outlined in the Constitution. There's a rapid decline of the executive branch into fascism. We have a corrupted Supreme Court and a complicit GOP Congress that are all being hijacked to serve power and not the people. But while I'm sitting here making the case to defend these systems, these very systems and institutions of the US, I want us to remember that critical race theory reminds us that for many, these institutions have never worked. Black, indigenous, and poor communities have long seen the law used as a tool of control and not protection. And we're seeing that more and more. And yes, these systems need defending, but they do not need defending blindly. We defend them so they can serve justice and not the elites. This means demanding reform even when they appear to work. Resistance without transformation is just maintenance. And we're here to transform. We're calling for transformation. Those systems that cannot be transformed for justice must be dismantled. These are some pictures that you can see of Heather in action with Moeep, and calling out at her school board meetings for change, demanding transformation, and bringing the stories and the people to the school board to demand change for their children and their school district. All right.
Yes, and we continue to do that. And so um, when we think about what to do as organizers, use your opposition's contradictions and hypocrisy as tools for public education and narrative building. And we don't mean public education as opposed it's like public school, but to educate the public. Expose what they hide to shift public opinion and organize effectively. However, be sure that you are using these contradictions to support your central message and your core goals. And so, the example that I want to give is that in the Francis House School District, my organization identified individuals who were interested in being part of our district captain leadership program, which trained them on how to organize to create change. In that situation, the Francis House School Board had been taken over by right wing extremists by a 5-2 margin. These individuals were hitting all the greatest hits. So, transgender bathroom policies, eliminating Black history and literature courses, attempting to ban books, getting rid of the was it resolution against racism and discrimination, and so much more. They were funded by a conservative extremist pact called Francis House Families. So to counter this, the district captain team decided to leave our program. I want to separate C3 from them. Leave our program and start a pact to counter. And so they called that pact Francis House Forward. And a key to their strategy was to point out not just the contradictions of the board members, but also those of Francis House families. And the result was that they were eventually able to flip the school board back to rational, nonpartisan individuals who really valued public school education. And they continue to fight the good fight as far as that's concerned. Strategy number 5, aim low
Favorite.
to go high. What'd you say?
I said that's my favorite.
Yeah, it is. Aim low to go high. So at the end of Euphoria, Kendrick warns Drake, if you take it there, I'm taking it further. That's something you don't want to do. And poor Drake took it there. And wow. So he then proceeded to do just that. When Drake went after his family, Kendrick countered by indeed taking it further. He created Meet the Grams to directly speak to each member of Drake's family. He also responded to Drake's most egregious accusations while sticking to his own messaging about Drake. That messaging wasn't intended to be nice and kind. Kendrick was going lower. This is where we should be every day in the fight. And I'm a really nice person. No, I'm a really kind person. We'll talk about that in a second. It is obvious that they are willing to go to the basement. So we have to acknowledge we're way past decorum and rules. If we're going to save democracy, we have to be willing to play by a different set of rules. We cannot continue to organize in the ways that worked in 2008. This is a new time, and we need to fight fire with fire. And so, my one of my favorite lyrics, he says, "The very first time I shot me a Drake, the homie had told me to aim it this way. I didn't point down enough. Today, I'll show you I learned from those mistakes."
All right, political parallel. So in August of this year, we watched the Texas legislature, under the request of Trump, undertake plans to redraw districts and gerrymander the state along racial lines in order to give Republicans a 5-seat advantage in the U.S. House for the 2026 midterm elections. On August 29th, 2025, the new map was signed into law by Texas Governor Abbott. The Republicans know that this administration's policies are very unpopular with the American people and that they are likely to lose the House in 2026. And this is why they are so willing to play dirty politics. The response, Governor Gavin Newsom of California promised that if Texas went through with it, that he would reciprocate and add further Democratic seats in California to counter the seats added by Texas. On November 4th of this year, the citizens of California will be voting to approve the redrawing of congressional maps in the state of California to counteract the seats that Texas stands to gain in 2026 if the Supreme Court does not intervene. So, folks are hoping that the Supreme Court will intervene, but we shall see. But Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois has also hinted that he will be willing to do the same. And so I encourage y'all to go follow Pritzker on social media, and also the governor of Chicago, because they've been dropping balls like nobody's business, and I love it. But anyway, so although decorum and traditional political practice, as well as the now gutted Voting Rights Act, would place these actions out of bounds and against the rules, integrity for us now means fighting fire with fire. We cannot follow the rules or color in the lines when our opponents exploit or ignore them to their advantage. And the reason why I said this is my favorite strategy, because I don't believe in coloring in the lines. If you know me, you know that. I love figuring out how I'm gonna skirt around by keeping my values and my integrity in place. But sometimes you got to break the rules in order to do what you got to do.
Yes. So when we think about this again from an organizing advocacy perspective, in organizing, this means that we have to understand that our opponents will often strategize around our tendency to be nice. They absolutely take our kindness for weakness, and so we can't let them. In my organizing work, the best example I can find is that our opposition consistently tries to hold us to a higher standard than they do themselves. Think about the Jasmine Crockett backlash when she called Governor Greg Abbott Governor Hot Wheels. Republicans went on and on for days about this. Some even called for her to resign because of it. Yet Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and Mike Lee consistently use name calling as a way to denigrate their Democratic opponents. And these same people never say a word. We won't even get into the Charlie Kirk situation. Even in my own organizing work, I've had people to try to call me out when I fought fire with fire. I have to remind them that while I am kind, I am not nice. Nice is how we landed here. I cannot and will not allow for the people who want to destroy public school education in Missouri to depend on me being nice so they can push through destructive policies. I want them to be always looking over their shoulder, knowing that I will go to the pits of hell to protect the children and educators of our state. While my moral code will remain intact, the rule book won't.
So a few months ago, Beto O'Rourke went on a series of town halls across the country, and he spoke in New Orleans. And one of the things that he said that stuck is that the next time we or the Democrats gain power, we need to drive the car like we stole it. No truer words have been spoken, and Democrats must do it without the purity tests and moral high horses that tend to stop them from truly doing what needs to be done. It's time to punch back and change the rules of the game. And in some instances, it will call for Democrats to throw the first punch. They have to be willing to do what they need to do in order to save this democracy that they keep calling for us to save, and they have the power to do it themselves.
So the Super Bowl as political theater, and we're gonna kind of take all of these strategies and bring them on home. Kendrick's Super Bowl performance was a cultural assassination. Using the biggest media platform in the country, he dismantled Drake, including naming him directly. That's narrative power at its peak, flipping institutional legitimacy to support your truth. Over the course of the 13-minute show, Kendrick used symbolism to transform the performance into a broader call for justice and resistance. So I don't want to reduce it to it being just about Drake. It wasn't. It was about something bigger. The performance showed us how cultural truth can disrupt dominant narratives on the biggest stages. So think about your own communities. What, where do these stages exist? They might be digital or literal, but where do your people fight for truth? So the kind of quote, the revolution is about to be televised. You picked the right time, but you picked the wrong guy. He said that during the Super Bowl.
With Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle
That's
Sam.
Uncle Sam.
All right. So Kendrick's win wasn't just about a rap beef. He shifted culture, he exposed power structures, and he made resistance joyful and collective. He gave people something to chant and rally around. Not like us is literally becoming not becoming, but it became the chant and rallying cry that we never knew we needed. So let's wrap this up. Let's talk about this blueprint that we've laid out for you. So from beef to liberation, um, Kendrick's tactics translated into movement tools. So strategic silence lets you build power quietly and then strike loudly. Target systems, not just people and symptoms, but dismantle roots. Use culture to make truth joyful and unstoppable, and expose contradictions so systems collapse under their own lies. As you can see, these pillars form this movement, right? And it is a roadmap for us to move from the beef to systemic liberation. We're not just fighting Trump. Um, because so many of the things that he has brought about um will still be here once he's gone. We're fighting the systems that have made his rise to power possible, his unchecked power possible. Our work requires precision, creativity, and cultural power. The phrase, as I said, they not like us, is our rallying cry. And so let's show them exactly why.
So we would like to thank you all for joining us.